all I did was stop stopping. I just didn't stop. Just stop stopping. This is what people do. You know, you don't feel like it today. You wake up, you're tired. A client cancelled. Someone wants a refund. Oh, is this really worth it? Do I really want this lifestyle? Maybe I'll just stop, right? The only thing I did differently to everyone else was I just didn't stop. I just kept, that was literally it, dude. I wasn't smarter, I wasn't more well connected, I didn't have any extra advantages, I figured it all out by myself. Like, my parents didn't give me anything, I just didn't stop. That was it. And it was not easy.
Why do you think you felt like that anxious and fear all the time?
Because I built my business based on fear of not wanting to go into 9 to 5, fear of not wanting to work until 60, get an okay marriage, maybe have some kids, and then be a slave.
Let's kick off.
Let's go.
All right, man. So I want to start at an interesting point, which I hear you speak about quite a lot, is internal state equals external reality. How did you come to that realization?
I would say it started 6 or 7 years ago. I was building my agency. I'd been doing it for a few years out of university. And well, before that, I got to a point leaving university where I studied economics for 5 years and I was ready to go and apply for the job at Goldman Sachs and go into finance, similarly to yourself. And I looked around at all my peers and they were all a lot smarter than me, intellectually, is what it is. And I saw them getting rejected from job after job after job at 6th, 7th stage interviews. And I thought, I don't know if this thing's for me, man. I don't know if this is for me. And so I decided to take the path of entrepreneurship. And I thought, you know what? Worst case scenario, I try business for a couple of years. I fail. I can always go back and apply. And that was the decision I made. Never applied for a single job. Parents were slightly surprised. They invested a lot of money in me to figuring out economics. And it was the best thing I ever did because it got me to that realization of internal state equals external reality. How? How did that happen? When I started the agency in my early 20s, I wanted to do it for one main reason: freedom, time, location, financial. Like most people in their 20s, right? They want freedom. They want to be able to be here in Bali. They want to be able to chill, go surfing, do whatever they want. And what I found was from actually attaining that, I remember I just released a video on my YouTube channel with Iman from years ago at this point, and it was like SMMA owner making 20K a month or something. And he was interviewing me because I was in his course to ask what I was doing and as a student client testimonial kind of thing. And I was looking back at that video because my editor just posted it yesterday, and I was looking back at that young boy version of myself thinking, okay, so he's in the nice apartment in London, in North London, where he always wanted to be. He had his dream girlfriend at the time. Everything looked great. But internally, I was anxious. I was borderline depressed. I was very unhealthy inside. I had no impulse control. I was driven by my lower ego. And so I realized that my external reality looked good, and everyone actually looked up to me. And everyone thought, oh, Ebrahim, knows what he's doing. He's the man. He's crushing it. And all that did was amplify how shit I felt internally, right? And so what happened was, during COVID, I remember traveling to Greece to try and escape the lockdown, actually. It was as the UK was going back into lockdown. Do you remember when it was going in and out of lockdown?
Yeah.
They were just...
That's when I came here, man.
Yeah, good decision, because I went to Greece, which wasn't in lockdown. The day I arrived, Greece went into lockdown. And I was with an ex at the time. They wouldn't even let us get in the same taxi. Yeah. I just flown her to another country. They wouldn't even let us get in the same taxi.
Same in Thailand and Mexico. I was also there.
And
tried everywhere.
So it was an absolute pain in the... Basically, we were going to go around the Greek islands, had this grandiose plan, had to just stay in Athens, which, look, not complaining, beautiful Airbnbs, got to live that. Yeah. But here's the thing. Whilst all that was happening, inside I was just driven by fear. I was waking up anxious. I was going to bed anxious. And that was my state of being. And what happened was I kept thinking, this is all going to fall apart. I don't deserve this. I'm not worthy of this. How have I even attained this? And that was the loop going on in my head, right? And so what happened was one day, in a 24-hour period, I lost half of my clients. Cancellation, 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 cancellation. And what was interesting about that when that happened was, you would think I would be really upset about that, but it was actually relief, because the reality of that was actually so much easier than what it was in my head, because I thought my whole life was over if that happened. And so that was when I realized, okay, there's something to this, something to do with what goes on here. You hear manifestation, you hear law of attraction, all these things thrown around. I used to think all that was complete. Are you allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, of course.
I thought this was complete bullshit, like complete and utter bullshit. But what I realized was, here's the thing. I was manifesting all of the things I did not want. And so I ended up losing half my client bases, relationship ended, business half started falling apart. I was in really bad health, full of injuries, lost a lot of weight. For some reason, I became vegetarian. I don't know why I did that.
You were really losing
I was really losing that. That's how you know. That's how you know, bro. I did vegetarian for a whole year.
Fuck. So you lost a lot of size as well.
Oh, dude, I can send you a picture if you want to chuck it up on here. Of me.
Yeah.
I was 64 kilograms.
You're tall as well.
Yeah, I was 64 kilos. I was skin and bone. Like you could see a little bit of muscle in there, but I was skin and bone, man. Like you would hug me and you'd like think I was gonna crack or something.
Why do you think you felt like that anxious and fear all the time?
Because I built my business based on fear of not wanting to go into 9 to 5, fear of not wanting to work until 60, get an okay marriage, maybe have some kids, and then be a slave for that entire life existence. But before Andrew Tate had started talking about the Matrix, I knew in my head it was literally like, and look, I have nothing against people in jobs. Loads of my good friends are in work. It just wasn't for me. But it literally felt like, okay, option A is go into the Matrix. Option B is not. Option A, I know the path that's going to lead down. Option B, I have no idea and no proof and no support, but something about this unknown thing, I'm just going to follow that intuition, right? So it was the logical mind versus the intuition. And for some reason, I followed that intuition, which was going into business. And so that's what kind of led me to that point.
Do you think building out of kind of fear of not wanting to go back to that life can be positive in some ways to get you going, like to light the spark on your ass? I think it was Jordan Peterson referenced the heaven and hell analogy, which I think comes from Cain and Abel, which you might be familiar with, which is like where you can get to if everything works and where things will fall apart if you don't get up and fucking start moving.
I needed it. I needed that fear. I needed that drive because nothing else was getting me out of bed. I was unmotivated. I was lazy because I didn't know what I wanted to do, right? And I coach a lot of young guys now who are in that exact same position, and they think, I just don't have motivation. It's like, no, you do. You just don't have the right motivations. If I told you, if you get out of bed at 6 a.m., go to the gym, train, do your outreach, get on sales calls, and you're guaranteed to become a millionaire in 5 years, they're going to be motivated if they knew that contractually that was going to happen, right? So it was just a lack of the right motivation. Fear was a great motivator at the beginning. The problem is I was too driven by that fear. And what happened was I didn't realize that. And so that fear never left me. And so that constant fear of maybe losing it is what happened. That is what manifested, because that's what I was thinking on repeat in my head, right? Thoughts create feelings, feelings create actions, actions create your reality. And so that was the reality I created.
It's very interesting, man. There's a guy called Charles Miller who would be a nice guy to reach out to for yourself. He's like a writer, and he made a really good point on my podcast one day. He said that, so in the beginning, it's very difficult to have an abundance mindset because you don't have anything. If you have $0 or 0 clients or 0 business, how the fuck can you think abundantly? So you are going to be in a scarcity point, but there needs to be an inflection point whereby you start thinking, okay, this is going to work. I'm going to make this work, and I don't need to be going to bed worried every night, to your point. Yeah. How do you change that? When do you make that change? You
need to realize that delusional thinking isn't going to help. So to your point, if you're in scarcity and just thinking, okay, I'm abundant, it's not going to work. In fact, it's going to push you in the opposite direction, because if you're telling yourself I'm abundant, I'm the successful guy, and you're shouting that in front of the mirror, like many people would say, I completely disagree with that, because if you don't believe it, then you're actually just subconsciously reinforcing the fact that you are not that person, you're not there, you don't have that success, right? So there's a middle ground. And the middle ground is to say, okay, I'm not there yet. That's reality. That's objective truth, right? It starts with just acceptance of the facts. It sounds simple, but you would be shocked, for myself and many, many other people who just do not accept the facts of their current reality, particularly in this online space, right?
Yeah.
Particularly in Bali, right? You meet these guys
Yeah.
and they'll say X, Y, and Z, they're putting up this stuff online, and then you meet them in person, as I'm sure you've met a lot of guys in person, and you realize, oh, this is not anything like what is being purported here, right? For probably more people than not that I meet. And so why is that? It's because they're living out of fear and insecurity, and therefore they're perpetuating that more. So the solution to that is to start by just accepting, okay, where actually am I right now? Okay, I'm in debt. Okay, like I don't have a girlfriend right now. Okay, I'm addicted to porn. Whatever those facts are. Because then you can build an action plan. Only then, once you know where you're actually at. Otherwise, you're continually building off this shaky house of cards foundation where, okay, you maybe get a few strategies here, a shiny object you found on YouTube, get a little bit of success, but then it all comes tumbling down again because there was no real foundation in the first place. So that's the starting point, right? That's where you begin from. And then it's just about actually putting in the action without expectation of needing that result instantly. Because I'll tell you a story from my own experience with my own agency, right? One of my closers, Freddie, he's 20, most of my team are around that age, and he was having a hard month on closing. He actually had a few fall throughs with clients, so he ended up not getting very much commission. And he said to me, look, bro, like I've been putting in all this work and I haven't really seen much result. My brother who works in the supermarket is going to get paid more money than me this month, right? And I was like, man, that's tough. Like for real, that is tough. But what have you gained in this last month? What wisdom have you gained? How much further are you towards your goals with the skills that you've acquired compared to your brother? And he was like, yeah, okay, I've actually become incredible at sales. I've communicated with all these business owners, X, Y, Z. And I said to him, look, this is the point where most people fail, right? You see that analogy of that gap in the big mountain where you fall down? I was like, you're right at that point right now. And all you have to do is decide to continue and just not stop. The only way to fail is to stop. Whenever people ask me about failure, I'm like, I just didn't stop. Been doing the agency for 7 years. I just didn't stop doing it. That was the only thing I did. I just didn't stop doing it, right? And the next day, he had a full calendar full of appointments, and he had his best ever week that week of all time in terms of what he earned in commissions because he went over that point and he trusted. And I said to him, and he said, yeah, but how do I know if that's true? And I said, well, I'm not asking you to believe it's true. I'm just asking you to temporarily suspend your disbelief that it's true. Just remove the mind for a moment. You've come here because you see me as a mentor. You know I can fast track you to where you want to get to. Just trust me. Trust my word, right? And sometimes you just have to put your trust into something and just blindly follow it for a period of time, because that's how you get over that hurdle, right? And sometimes you just got to do that, and it might not work out. It's not guaranteed to work out, but you will almost certainly get further than if you didn't.
You're going to move closer to a target versus sitting and kind of going around and circling your own kind of almost depression to some degree. Like you're just going to get caught up in your own mind, and this is kind of why I don't really like just talking about business a lot of the time. I like the aspect of, okay, this is the plan, this action plan, and then just doing it. You know what I mean? Like to your point there about how to become make your first million. It is literally a combination of just doing as much outbound as possible, as much fulfillment as possible, not fucking it up, getting case studies. You have 1, then you have 4, then you have 8, then you have 12. You know, it just kind of like, it's meant to be boring. And I think when people get bored of the process, they're like, oh, you know, looking at Iman or looking at you or looking at like a Matt Kelly or whatever, it's like exciting for them. But man, I know for a fact, Matt was saying that how like arduous and difficult his process is of just even testing products. It could be 9 months. He could be looking at powder, you know, and he's gone through so much different difficulties. So I think that's like very, very valuable to know, like that 7 years you've been at this.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, and I make a point to tell people that because everyone just sees you for where you are now. Okay, you're at this point. You must have just got there quickly. No. Are there cases where that's possible? Yes. But why compare yourself to Facebook? Yeah. Right? What's the benefit in that? And to your point, when I had a chat with Matt, I asked him, I said to him, because he's done, 25, 30 million or something in e-com, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, why have you been successful at this when there are a graveyard of e-com stores by hundreds of thousands of people? And I said, why? And he said, because I actually focused on the product. How crazy is that? That was the light bulb answer. Mm-hmm. He actually focused on building a good product. And to the point of that, I knew about him through his product first before really knowing about him. and I thought it was a great product. And that was how I found out about him first. So I was like, that shows the truth. But people, I'll tell you one more story. Last night I was at dinner and a bunch of young guys, and everyone was asking about different mindsets, right? Of earning 10K a month, 100K a month, a million, a billion. And someone asked me, do you have any billionaire friends? And I said, I've hung out with a couple billionaires. And they were like, oh, what are the secrets? What are the hacks? And I was like, honestly, I learned the least from them. I learned, because it's so unrelatable to where they're at and the things that they're doing. They're like in Verbier, skiing, smoking cigars, eating, cheese all day, and they have one meeting with someone for an hour, and that's their next like $100 million business, right? Yeah. That's what it's like at that level. That is not what it's like when you're on the come up. But that's also not what they did to get there. I know they spent their entire life working 18 hours a day to get to that point. And it is that the one thing I did say when they were asking me, and they said, just give me one answer. I said, okay, they just did one thing for their whole life consistently. That was that. If you look at billionaires, that almost all of them just did one thing. There are some who have done multiple billion-dollar companies. There are a few, but the vast majority of them just did one thing consistently, well, for a really long period of time, and just didn't fuck it up.
Man, I relate to that in so many different ways, right? So many different ways. So firstly, just on that from like a data perspective, my podcast has had people that are like, to your point, like 100 million, 500 million, like net worth, or have companies that are of that value. And those episodes do horrific in comparison to someone like yourself, who's, just a little bit older than me, who's relatable, who's young, who's actually doing this stuff. And you're like, 10 or 100 steps ahead, not a million miles ahead, right?
Yeah.
And that's like why it's like so ridiculous, to be honest, in the first place. And to your point about doing the one thing, right? So as I mentioned to you earlier, so my background was in finance, technology, whatever, like startups, like the startup world. But I was doing so many different shit. I was options trading. I was working 9 to 5. I was doing coaching for people who were coming into these tech roles, right? Because my podcast was a careers podcast. I had like a lot of opportunity just to do like consulting stuff, not scalable, but a good actually business, but not scalable. What else was I doing? I was doing loads of shit, man. And it was all just a waste of time from a financial perspective. I got a lot out of it, whatever, but none of it was... I had like 8 different verticals, and they were all meaningless to some degree. And now I've just done one thing, which is the podcast thing, which is a combination of the agency and my stuff, of course. And it's fucking propelled forward as a result. Yeah. Now, it's not the same stage that you're at, because of course you've been there 7 years. But I just think it's funnier. And I don't know, are you familiar with Marcus Hustle at all? Yeah. Yeah? He's on my show, great guy. I reference this point about 500 times every episode. He said it's called the shower test. When you're in the shower and you're washing your hair, you have one thing to think about. You're not thinking of 4 different shit. Think about one thing. And then as you scale that to where you're probably at, then you can start thinking about other things like masterminds and coaching programs and all that kind of stuff. But you need to have that one vehicle and just commit to the process and shut the fuck up and just do the work, Yeah.
But you needed to go through that process, so it wasn't a waste of time. Because you could hear what you just said on this podcast, an earlier version of you, and be like, okay, yeah, he's saying focus on one thing, but no, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. Right? You needed to experience it for yourself. And this is the thing, right? This is why sometimes I don't think anything's a waste of time, because all of the skills and knowledge you acquired from that have got you to this point. And now you've learned that lesson, right? Now you've really learned that lesson and you focused, and now you're getting that growth. And actually, I would say you learned that lesson really young. You learned that lesson in your 20s. Yeah. A lot of people don't learn that lesson until way later on in life. So I think we can choose our perspective. You decide. It's down to you, right? So my thing is, well, why not just choose to look at it in a way that actually serves you, and then it becomes a benefit.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense, man. Yeah. I want to ask you about the agency. So why have you been at it 7 years?
So yeah, to be real, I had a lot of ups and downs with it. I fell out of love with it for years. There was a period of time where I didn't even want to tell people I was doing the agency. I was really not into it. And the reason I wasn't into it is because I didn't love what I was doing. I didn't love the process. I didn't love the people I was helping. It was just a means to an end. It was just a way to earn 10, 20K a month and have a lifestyle business. And I did that for a long time. And here's the thing. It got me to that point of freedom, like I said, right? In those first year or 2 or something like that. And then once I'd attained that, I'd met that vision. I'd manifested it, I'd visualized it, and I hit that point. And I remember specifically, I was sitting on this Airbnb at the top on the roof in Greece with a glass of wine, looking at the sunset, and I was like, oh, I'm exactly where I wanted to be those couple of years ago. And then I just lost all motivation because I was there, goal achieved, right? And so then that's when things went down, that's when things stagnated because I hadn't yet assigned new meaning or like a vision to that. Like, what was the point of it? And so after doing that, really like going on more of a spiritual journey, realizing that actually I get more fulfilled from coaching people and working with people, that's what led me into coaching. And then it was only last year I realized that coaching is what I love to do. If I look at this agency, how can I apply that to it, right? And I did this very good exercise that I recommend people do. Write down what you enjoy doing. Don't worry about how it relates to business. Just write down the things that you enjoy. One of the things I enjoyed was just genuinely giving people support, help, advice, and seeing them actually propel. I always had mentors when I was younger. And the reason why I was able to get really good mentors is because I would do the shit they said straight away. And then they'd be really happy seeing that I'd actually done something with it, right? And so that's what I was doing. And basically, at a certain point, I realized last year, I'm here to coach people. That's what I get fulfilled by. So then I started to grow the agency. I started looking at these guys I was already coaching. They started working with me with my agency. And I was able to coach them in their roles in the agency. So they do better, they grow, they earn more, they develop way faster. And I get to coach them. And as a result, the business grows. And so that was how I was able to find that fulfillment in the work, because there were so many years where I was like, oh, I don't like being an agency owner. I don't like the identity of it, X, Y, Z.
Why?
I didn't enjoy it. So that was why I didn't like it.
Why didn't you enjoy it though?
I didn't get fulfillment out of it.
Because of like what the tasks involved.
Yeah. And I didn't really think I was providing genuine value, like to the clients. Like, sure, I was doing lead gen and all these things, but it didn't feel like it was really changing their business. So there was a whole host of things we did. I can get, if you want to go into details, like you said, I'd be more than happy to go into that. So I realized the coaching thing. I realized that I get more out of coaching people and seeing them grow. I also realized from helping tons of real estate agents or estate agents in the UK, we can send them loads of leads. Some of them would crush it and we have, be the best testimonial story for us. Others would get shit all and do nothing with the exact same leads. And it took me, my dumb self, a while to realize that, it's actually because of them. I used to think it was just, it's just the leads. So if Facebook was having a bad day, I was having a bad day. And a good friend of mine, Matt Shields, his name is, he grew a real estate agency from 0 to 300K in 12 months. Did a multi-7-figure exit recently at 21, just turned 22. And he'd be great on your podcast, by the way. I had him on mine. Yeah, I'll hook you up with him if you want to do a podcast.
Absolutely, man.
And he showed me his model. He showed me what he was doing. And he showed me that he wasn't just sending these guys leads. They were actually coaching them. They were actually providing a program, content, actual coaching for the agents they were working with. And lo and behold, the results were 10 times better, because now they're not just a lead gen company because whatever the service is, right, that you or I provide, it can be easily commoditized. Let's be honest, right? Look at accounting, perfect industry. Being a bookkeeper has been, a good solid job for many, many years. Then Xero comes along, QuickBooks comes along, now it's automated. So what do they have to do? They have to up level, provide consultancy, provide something that's harder to outsource, right? The skill set and the knowledge. And so I looked at the agency in the same way. And so we created a hybrid agency where the first thing we say when we get on our demo call is, we are not a lead generation company. And I'm like, what? I'm like, yes, we will send you leads. However, we're also going to be coaching you. There's also going to be a mastermind. There's also going to be group calls. There's also Prop University, which is our course content for the agents. And these things are essential.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to get the guarantee that we promised you on the front end, the nice, sexy guarantee, you have to do these things. And so now their buy-in is so much more, right? and this is the key to really get people to succeed. Even when I'm coaching someone, I coach 6, 7, some 8-figure entrepreneurs. I only coach them if they're bought in. I'm not here to help anyone who doesn't want to do the work, because they're not going to be successful and it's going to be a waste of time. And I tell the agents that. And so that was really the key shift. And to anyone who is running an online service business or any kind of business, I would say add that into it, because that's what also builds the relationship.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you straight, some of our best clients who got the most insane results for would leave. Some of the longest standing clients that we've had for like 3+ years, we've got mediocre results for, to be honest. They're okay. Are they positive? Sure, just about. But it's the relationship that kept them in.
Yep.
So by doing that, you actually increase the LTV anyway, right? And this really is the key. We're going more into AI. We're using more AI now. We just got about to install an AI appointment setter. It's going to be awesome. But at the same time, we're also going more into personalization. So we're working with these two opposing sides of, in the world of automation, which is great. We want to automate stuff. It's efficient. People are craving personalization and connection more than ever. So we said, okay, how can we bring that into the agency? How can we customize, personalize, give people that premium feel? Little things. Send them a gift. Give them a call out. Give them a call out of the blue. You know, just like have a bit of extra time with them. You know, really ask them what their wins are. Like, get to know their family. These little things that a lot of guys, including myself in this space, maybe just haven't been taught that in the agency course or whatever online business course that they took, right? Because it's about how to get clients. It's not about how to fulfill clients. And so these are like the soft skills that don't necessarily get taught in an online course. They get taught through experience.
And that's why people can't retain some clients, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know the model, like that SMMA model, is like more clients. But like you want to just retain clients, man.
So it's so much easier to retain a client than generate a client. Particularly, like my cost to acquire a client is pretty high because we have to pay ad costs. We have to pay our setter who qualifies them. I have to pay the sales guy a bunch of commission. I then have to pay my customer success manager a bunch. I have to then pay the person who's calling the leads for them. I then have to pay for software. So it's like, do you think I want to keep spending to acquire, or do you think if I just make a client last 6 months to 12 months, I've just doubled not just the overall revenue, but the profit? Because that 6 months you're not paying anything for, right?
100%, man. And what's funny about that is, like, you know, there's so little focus on the fulfillment side of things, but that's where it all breaks down to. You know what I mean? That's where like your business is actually going to grow as well, because you're going to see that. It's funny you said there about the strategy point of view. So obviously my agency is like podcast work, right? And to a degree, there's output. So 4 episodes a month, 20 clips a month, whatever. But I always say it's not to do with output, it's to do with outcome. And yeah, we have a load of guys who will do the editing and do the copywriting and stuff, but I'll be there with you to hold your hand and to re-navigate and get back on track. And I'll give them like a spreadsheet of things when it's working, when it's not working, how to change it. And they pay more for the strategy calls than anything else. And we're just talking. We're just going back and forth, whatever. And they'll make those small adjustments, and which is hilarious, because as I always say to them as well, like, you could do this work yourself to certain degree of, you know, quality, but of course it's plausible, but you lose out on all the information that you're building. Yeah. And that's what I've spent the last 3 years working on, you know what I mean, myself personally. I think I love that, man. I love that approach. I want to ask about how you maintain your endurance through the agency. It's been 7 years now. How did you maintain your actual love for it? How come you didn't pivot into something else?
Yeah, it's funny because I think nobody who I started with who's still running an agency when I started out. I know a bunch of them who are still in the space but doing completely different things, right?
That's the way it always is, though, isn't
it?
it?
Yeah, of course, right? Well, the honest answer is what I said before. Like, I didn't enjoy it the whole time, right? There were a lot of ups and downs. The only thing, if this is the one thing people remember, that all I did was stopping. I just didn't stop. Just stopping. This is what people do. You know, you don't feel like it today. You wake up, you're tired. A client cancelled. Someone wants a refund. Oh, is this really worth it? Do I really want this lifestyle? Maybe I'll just stop, right? The only thing I did differently to everyone else was I just didn't stop. I just kept. That was literally it, dude. I wasn't smarter. I wasn't more well connected. I didn't have any extra advantages. I figured it all out by myself. Like, my parents didn't give me anything. I just didn't stop. That was it. And it was not easy. It's simple but not easy, right? If you ever heard that. It's so simple. All you have to do is set appointments, sign clients, and fulfill them. And just continue to do that process and do it well over a long period of time. But because there are so many shiny objects, there's always this new thing. Marketers are so freaking smart in our space. They know how to get you onto the next thing, right? The next opportunity. Everyone pivots to, you know, like the guy you mentioned doing OnlyFans agencies or whatever it is. And you can do well in it. And a lot of people do. I know a bunch of guys who do that. But the problem is then when that dies out, which it will, then, okay, crap, what's the next thing? Is it going to be a Web3 agency, right? And it's just this continuous cycle. And to me, it's like, well, if I can't make one thing work, why am I going to make that thing work, right? It's looking at the next shiny object, which is really just a band-aid. Whereas for me, coming back to internal state, that is the root cause, right? It's working on the self, working on growing yourself, the entrepreneur. Why is it you have 15,000 people in Iman Ghazi's course, only 500 to 1,000 have made six figures? I don't know the numbers, but let's just say that's true. Because of them.
Yep.
They had access to exactly the same things. So to me, it was just obvious. Why don't I just work on myself, work on this internal world, right? And then that's really been how I've been able to sustain those ups and downs. Because I know no matter what the down is, even in the last 24 hours, I had a bunch of fires that happened. A bunch of different things happened all in 24 hours. Where me a couple of years ago would have been all over the place, would have been stressed.
Unstable, everything.
But knowing how to manage that internal state, okay, 5 minutes, do the inner work, I'm good to go. And then I'm back. And then it's business as usual.
Did you ever find yourself changing perspective as you began to make more money?
In what way?
Becoming a bit more, like, say, greedy, or spending more on stuff you don't necessarily want? Like, you seem very grounded now.
Yeah.
But, like, I think you said you're up to around 50K a month now at the moment,
Yeah.
and you're pushing on. Did you ever change your perspective, like want to move to Dubai, get a lot of Rolexes?
I've been good with money. I have not been good with money. I'll straight up say that. It was only been like in the last 12 months that I've started to take money seriously. And the reason why is because I'm in a long-term committed relationship, whereas there's that future that we're both building towards now. Before that, I only wanted the freedom, right? So essentially, if I had the freedom, and this is all subconscious, right? Most people don't even realize this is what's going on. This is why the inner work's so key. Subconsciously, okay, I've achieved what I've wanted to achieve. So if I've got surplus cash, why not spend it on X, Y, Z? I did a few things, bought a few watches, all that kind of stuff. But for whatever reason, I just realized it didn't bring me fulfillment. And so, yeah, I didn't necessarily change my perspective much. I was never super motivated by the really materialistic things. I would see it, right? I forget what the word is, like mimetic desires, right? When you desire what you see somebody else has, right? Yeah. So you see the guy on YouTube with the Lamborghini, you just desire that just because he has it. But do you actually want that? Because that's what a lot of people do, right? They see it, they pursue it. Sometimes they even get it. That's the worst point. If you actually get it, you can no longer say, I'll be happy when I have that, because you have it and you're still depressed.
That's actually programming and conditioning in itself. So, you always mention like unplugging from the matrix or whatever it is. So that's obviously a part of conditioning, where it's like, get the job, get the mortgage, be happy, or work this job, be miserable, but be happy whatever you're working at 5. But at the same time, in the online space, there's like that Lambo, Bugatti, facade, which is the same type of conditioning. It's like you're getting into this business so that you could only go buy those things, which is like the wrong way to look at it. And you have the same with the people who are escaping one matrix to be actually put into another one.
Yeah, I joke about this all the time. I go, look, none of us wanted to go into 9 to 5. Now we're in like 8 till 8. Right?
Yeah.
Like literally, like you think it's going to bring you to this life of freedom, and then you realize, oh, actually, no.
Yeah.
In order to have that freedom, you need even more discipline, right? Jocko Willink says discipline equals freedom. I completely agree with that. And it's actually way harder when you're running a business because you have nobody telling you what to do.
100. And that's why we were discussing about meeting up and doing other stuff, man. Because like 100%. Even with your girlfriend and my girlfriend, I didn't interrupt you, apologies for that. It's like their interests are slightly different than yours. So you can't necessarily like bounce ideas even off them, And even someone who's even in the same space as you, it's still a lonely pursuit to go and try to do this to your own. And there's small nuances which is why you have accountability partner, or you work with mentors or influences,
One thing I'll say on the girlfriend point, because I was doing a coaching session with a guy a couple days ago, and he was saying, he's building a software, super smart guy, very technical minded. And he was saying, he didn't feel like he was really giving his girlfriend as much attention as he wanted to because he was focusing on the business. Really common thing that I see with a lot of guys who I speak to. And I said, well, like, what are your conversations with her? He's like, well, yeah, I've just built this new Python programming and I ran her through all of that. I was like, I was like, dude, like, no wonder, man. She doesn't give a shit, and neither should she give a shit.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? That's not what she's there to support you for. She's there to provide you like emotional support, spiritual protection, to nurture you, to rejuvenate you, not to continue your work day. Right? And so like with my girlfriend, while I won't ask her maybe like, okay, what do you think about this strategic business move? I will say, hey, I'm looking at hiring this new closer. You want to just like get a vibe for his sense. What does your intuition say? Because I know that's on point, and I know, and I trust that in her. She's a good judge of people, right? And so I think when it comes to like girlfriends, you can bring them in, but look at what their actual strengths are. Because as men, we think so logically, right? And we want that, okay, like, girl, like, babe, what outreach strategy should I be doing? Like, should I be using Facebook or Instagram? And I'm like, what are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
But that's exactly what your guy friends are for, right? And that's why I love hanging out. Like, I hang out mostly with men. I have a lot of female friends, but I hang out mostly with men because they're helping me get towards that mission more, which is what more my focus is.
Yeah, and that's why it's so valuable to have those people around you. Now, it's difficult to build up that influence, I guess. And like, what were some of your like earlier mentors or influences? Because you were in Iman's course.
Yeah, I did Iman's course. He was a really big influence actually, because I was in London. Here's this like 17-year-old millionaire 15 minutes down the road from me. Like, you can imagine like that proximity being like, wow, this is possible, right? Mm-hmm. But even before that, the first ever mentor I would say was Ty Lopez.
Everyone starts with him.
Yeah, dude. Well, he birthed this whole industry. I really want to create a meme of just him like this is what's in my head, right? He's on a hospital bed table, and he's got like a white sheet over him, and his legs are open, and he's screaming, and then there's just SMMA coming out of his legs, and that's him birthing it in like 2016.
That's so funny.
And I always have that in my head whenever I say that. And yeah, he was the influence for me. Saw his ads. Saw his Lamborghini ads. I remember everyone. I was in university was taking the piss out of this guy, doing his American accent. Here in my garage, and eventually I was like, well, let me just see what this thing's about. And that was the first ever course I bought. It was $67.
Why do you think some people shit on it and some people don't?
I think it looks scammy, right? It's a dude on the internet showing a Lamborghini. It looks like bullshit, right? It doesn't look real. And most of it is. It's not that it's just a complete fraud. It's just that it's usually depicted in a way to make it seem easier, or like you'll be more successful than you actually will be. Because that's not what sells you, right? To your point earlier about why don't people teach fulfillment? Because they can't fulfill. And it's not sexy.
100%.
So why would they talk about it, right? It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, going back to him, he taught me two things. One, read books. Two, get a mentor. So I was like, all right. I went to his website and he had like top 100 books, because this dude, his thing was I read a book a day, right? That was his whole like thing.
How does he even do that?
Dude, I don't know. Like, he's probably not reading every page, obviously, right? But just like
flicking through him.
Yeah, pretty much. And he he had thousands of books all over his house and garage and whatever, right? And so I bought a bunch of books, started reading them, and instantly it just shifted my consciousness, shifted my understanding. I'm reading biographies of Steve Jobs, of Arnold Schwarzenegger, reading business books, reading startup books, personal development books, and suddenly like my whole reality is changing, because I'm putting, instead of garbage into my brain, garbage in, garbage out, I was starting to put in good things. And so in my head now I'm like, okay, I'm reading books, I need this mentor thing. Like, where do I get where do all these mentors hang out? I need to it's like, where's the club where you go get one of these mentors, right? And again, what you focus on is what you create, right? I was just looking for it, and a guy came in to do a workshop at my university called Marcus. He ran a marketing agency. He was exactly 10 years older than me, and he was like the most successful agency, I think, in Europe. This was by Google, depicted by Google, so like really successful. And I just walked up to him at the end. I was like, hey, shitting myself. I was so nervous, this little kid. And I was like, can I work for you for free? Right, and in my head, I was thinking, yeah, I'll provide him all this value, and then he'll want to mentor me. And he just looked at me, and he smiled, and he laughed, and he just said no. Really nicely, he said no. He said, but let's go for coffee. Now, I realized in hindsight, the reason he said no, and the reason I say no now to a lot of people who ask the same thing, is because you're more of a liability, than an asset. Like, you think you can help them, but actually you're costing them so much by being just there. Yeah, by being there, right? And you're not actually adding value, you're taking away more value. And so we just started going for coffees. And here's the thing, we just became friends, man. We just got on, and then whenever he'd give me some little tidbit, I'd go and do it. And after doing that for a while, and I was learning Facebook ads back then, because I was learning a hard skill as well. I was like, all right, I need to figure this out. I remember spending like $2,000 on this Facebook ads course, and it was insanely complex. Like Facebook ads back then were like literally like freaking rocket science. Like the amount of shit you had to know to run a Facebook ad compared to now was insane. And he said, oh, like we don't run Facebook ads. We have this client who we've had for years who wants to run Facebook ads. Like, do you want to run them for them? And I was like, wow, okay. I can either go, one, shit, I've never done this before and I have no idea what to do, or I can just go for it. And I said, yeah. And he said, okay, cool. Yeah, just do the work and just bill me whatever your hourly rate is. So the first thing I did was I went home, I went to my computer and I Googled average hourly rate of a marketing executive. And it was, I think it was £90 per hour or £80 per hour. And so, yeah, I did the work and billed him at the end. He paid me instantly without asking any questions. But the main thing I learned from that experience was belief, because he believed in me enough to say, you can, go and do this. And it wasn't a big deal. To him, he didn't even think about it. It wasn't this big thing in his head. He was just like, yeah, you can go do that. Mm-hmm. And that gave me the belief. And really all of this just comes down to self-belief, right? And so if you're aware of that, and I was aware of that, I then just used that. That was all I needed to just go like, all right.
One step.
I need what? Give me one opening. Yeah. Give me that foot in the door, and I'll go. And now here I am, my new identity. I now do this for businesses. Yeah. This is my expertise. This is my skill, and that was how I started.
There's so much there in terms of like someone else believing in you, because you can have those ideas in your head, and again, like you've no confidence, no experience, no social proof, and you're like, yeah, I want to go do this. But the second someone believes in you, and it can be for free. So funny you said that. My first like role was with a startup in Ireland, and I was like coming out of university, and I was still in university, and I wanted to get experience. I messaged the guy on LinkedIn, and I goes, I will work for you for free, as like a fucking basic analyst, whatever. And he was like, yep, come in tomorrow. Went in for an interview, and he paid me like a proper salary for it. But I remember that was the first time I was like, okay, this internet thing, like I can meet people, I can go do something, and that was for a career. At the same time, when I started doing like other shit, I had no idea how to run an agency, no idea what to do, anything, no idea how to even speak to a team. But the second someone else believes in you, that's when you can just back it up yourself then. And every single time, then you just get better and better and better and better and better, you know? It's not made up in your head, like you do it through like real life experiences.
Yeah. And if you're really smart, if you're smarter than what I was, you can just borrow that belief. Yeah. Right? And so here's what happened, right? When I was doing that Tai Lopez's course, bunch of people were coming into this. Every day I was seeing it on Snapchat. Next success story, next success story, next success story. And eventually I was like, all right, if these 14-year-old kids can do it, I've got a university degree. I can do this thing too.
Yeah, I can do something.
I had enough. I was like, take the money. Yeah. I'm coming in. And that course gave me one thing, belief. That's what that course gave me. Everyone shits on this course because it wasn't that great, to be honest, in terms of the actual mechanics of it. Mm-hmm. But it gave belief because it created a new opportunity. And so actually, I'd say it was one of the most valuable courses that I've spent 6 figures on self-education at this point. That was one of the most valuable courses I ever bought for that reason.
Again, it all goes back to what you can take from that experience. You know what I mean? Like everyone is completely different, but it's like two people can go into that space, you know? And that's why like confidence in other domains, like so like you're into your fitness, you're into multiple different domains. Having confidence in those areas, you can bring that into the business space. Even 100%. With your economics degree, like what university did you go to?
UEA, Norwich.
Yeah, so like it's going to be a high quality university. It's going to be a difficult degree. You've done it. You've done really well in it. You've done that. Now this is a new vertical, but you can still go and progress really strongly at it, you know? Yep. So I think that's where we need to kind of build more confidence in it. I want to ask you about the real estate side of things. So why did you, I guess, niche down into real estate?
Dude, I don't know if we were on or off air before I said this, but I recently, for the last month, I've been taking sales calls for my agency. Yeah. And these guys would jump on with me because they see me in the ads that we run, right? So when I'm actually on the call with them, they're like, oh, like they're surprised to see me because they've seen my face everywhere. And I'll go to London sometimes and I'll have estate agents come up to me and be like, oh, you the Facebook ads for estate agents guy? And that was one of the moments when I was like, all right, I need to start looking at something else to do here because that is not what I want to be known for. But Anyway, yeah, I've probably seen millions of times at this point in the UK. If you ever do anything property related in the UK, you're going to see my face. And what was the question again? I lost my
How
train of
come
thought.
you niched
Oh
down
yeah,
into
so
that?
what?
Like,
So yeah, a bunch of them were asking me that question. And again, just being totally honest, it wasn't this grandiose plan. It was just I started out trying to start a marketing agency. I'd be pitching you right now. If this is me, I'd be like, you do something to business, I'll run your Facebook ads. I'll be getting a haircut, I'd be like, I'll run your Facebook ads. Guys serving me pizza, I'll run your. That was literally me. So I get so frustrated when I mentor these young guys and they're like, oh, outreach is hard. I'm like, bro, I used to walk around with a file of facts, literally going into businesses, trying to show them examples of Facebook ads to be like, I can do this. Do you want one? Like, I'll do this for you. Like literally like that. That's what I was doing. So much output, dude. And I got a client who was an estate agent, and I got really good results.
and then you just sort of like, fuck it, like
That was
forget
it.
all the hair
That was
places, the pizza places, forget
That was
all
it.
that.
All it was the results. I was like, I'm here to make money. Like, I can get results for these guys. I can sell them. I can make this into a business. And then I just doubled down on it.
How do you position yourself for fulfillment in that aspect? Were you building a team earlier on? Like, how did you grow the agency?
Oh man, it makes me sound old. It's actually sometimes hard to remember exactly what I did, but I can say that I could do every skill in the agency. So I would run
That's important.
I would run the ads. I would take the sales calls. I would do the fulfillment. Now, I think it's good to know what your strengths and weaknesses are. I did not know what my strengths and weaknesses are. A test I took only recently is called Wealth Dynamics. I highly recommend it. It's basically like a very high quality personality test for entrepreneurship specifically, and then how you work well in a business, but also how you work well with team members and what kind of roles you need to support you. So I'll tell you myself as an example. I'm what's called a star. A star is my main personality type. I like big picture, inspiration. I actually like shining the light on other people. That's why I have a podcast, because I love being the other way around on this. Lifting people up, right? But my weaknesses are fulfillment, numbers, details.
You had an economics degree.
Yeah, dude, it was a hard degree for me for that reason. I'll tell you a funny story about that in a minute. Organization, timing, these are just weaknesses for me, right? I didn't know that. It was happening and I was suffering because of it, but I didn't know that that was the case. So if I can say one other thing, it's like, learn to know yourself. That personality test is $97. And that might sound like a lot of money for a personality test, but I can tell you, if you know yourself after doing that, that's well worth $97 spent. And I was doing everything, and what happened was I was doing everything, and I would sell a client, fulfill a client, service a client, try and retain a client, but then I need to keep repeating that cycle, right? So I was on this kind of perpetual wheel where I'd be at like maybe 5K a month, get a couple clients, but then something would drop off, service delivery or whatever it was, because all outreach would drop off because I didn't have enough time, and it was this like hamster wheel. A lot of people go through this. And so I think the first person I hired, I think it was a media buyer to run the ads, who I just taught myself because I knew it inside out. So someone from the Philippines. She's been with me since the start, and she crushes it because I just taught her myself. And then what I tried to do was I realized, I actually don't like doing these sales calls. I'm an introverted guy slightly, naturally.
You don't seem it.
Yeah, I could like turn it up when I need to. But I hired someone for sales calls. Biggest mistake I could have made, because I hired it because I didn't want to do it, not because everything was going great and I could now just like leverage it, right? It's like people do this for outreach as well, to say, okay, I hate doing outreach, I suck at outreach, so I'll hire a VA. Worst thing you can do, because all they're going to do is perpetuate what you're already doing. So if you're already shit at sales, that closer is also going to be shit at sales. It doesn't matter how good they were before. It's your process. And so I got burned many, many times. Hiring a wrong salesperson is one of the most expensive mistakes you can make in business.
That's why I'm very cautious of hiring salespeople. Because as I mentioned to you, like my model is slightly different than yours, and my face is the business.
I wouldn't do it anytime soon for you, honestly, until you're doing like 50 calls a month at least. I wouldn't hire a salesperson.
Yeah. I kind of also like it because I can distill my own thoughts of where the business is and where the business is going and the service that we do.
Dude, 100%.
You know?
Yeah, 100%. And so, yeah, sales. And then I said, okay, well, I don't like hiring. I don't like fulfilling. I don't like getting on calls with these clients. and fulfilling, right? This is just
You
the
don't like
truth.
doing everything.
Yes, I realized like, well, this is how I fell out of love with it, right?
Yeah, of course.
So out of pain, I hired a like a marketing manager to take care of all the marketing. Guess what? It didn't work out. Why? Because again, hiring out of like the wrong place, and it led me on that hamster wheel again. So it was only when I took full responsibility to say, okay, I'm going to master this area of the business. I'm going to focus on that one area. So this is what I was doing with sales. This is why I was taking a bunch of sales calls in the last month. So I can master that area, get an insanely high level of like sales process in every single little detail by doing it myself, by being in it. And now I've got an incredible sales process that is, I literally know how good it is because now I know all the best guys in the industry, so I know exactly what they're doing, and I can take all the best bits and I can apply it to my own agency. And now we have a great sales process, right? And then we're just doing that in every division. And from that point, I would say, then go and hire. And so now I have, like maybe 10 people in the team. And I would say one other thing, just to go like super strategic with agency, the phrase I go by is when I win, you win. When you lose, I lose. My mentor, Brendan, said this to me one time. And I really love that. I really, really like that because it's like this brotherhood, you know? And so when there's a new client who comes in, Freddie signs a new client, everyone wins. Everyone in the agency wins because everyone gets a piece of that.
Yep.
And I love that because we're all on the same team, right? And when if a client drops, that hurts everyone. And we're all in that together as well. And we're not there being a bitch and victim about it, but everyone's still in that, right? So we're there for the highs and the lows. And the best thing about the agency now is the culture. That is the I get guys who are way overqualified, want to come and work with me, say, I want to quit my business, come and work for you. It's not because the business is great. I'd say we're the best at what we do at this point because we've just spent so much time on it. Like no one has been doing it for as long as we have, at least in the UK, just because we've been here for so long, which is also why it's easier now. But it's the culture, right? And so that, again, culture only came from me taking responsibility, doing this inner work, and now the culture is really, it's just an extension of the business owner. It's an extension of you. And that's what also attracts the best talent, I've found. Because at a certain point, all you care about is who can you attract? Who are the people you can attract into your business? Not clients. Who are the team? Who's the team? Because it's all people.
How would you explain the culture within your company now? Like, what would you say the values are?
We have our values really clear. I'll give you a couple of them. And one I added recently that wasn't in there before, which I was kicking myself, was humility. And humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. And this is really key because what can happen when you're in a role is you can just get focused on your one thing and you can forget how it affects the team, affects the collective. And so having that humility to say, actually, I effed up here, or actually, I do need help, or actually, I need some coaching right now, or something's going on in my personal life, I need someone to talk to. Having the humility to be able to do that is essential. And so the new guy I hired, Ash, he'll probably see this. He knows 30 other closers applied for this position. Almost all of them were more experienced than him. But I hired him because of his personality. He had humility. I could see he was coachable. I could see he'd get on with the culture. And so that was why I made the decision. Other ones are just extreme ownership. Yeah. So everyone in their own role takes complete ownership of it. I stole this from my friend Matt, who runs that big agency. The way he put it was, be the CEO of your own role. And I love that. Because it's ultimately taking responsibility, right? Those are a couple of them. And I used to think values were just very airy-fairy. And I used to think like, well, how does that affect anything? Because you can't touch culture, right?
It's just big companies, it makes no sense. Yeah. Because everyone's just from different backgrounds, it makes no sense. But obviously for very small companies, it does. Dude,
I think it makes sense for everyone. I really do. I think it's like if you follow people who are religious or people who follow a spiritual path or something higher than themselves, right? We need guidelines to keep us on track, to follow. We need some kind of channel to keep us moving forward. Otherwise, like, dude, I spent years just being a leaf in the wind, just like go doing a bit of this, doing a bit of that. And I thought that was what I wanted, but I really just wasn't living up to my own potential. And again, like as a man, that's one of the things that fulfills us so deeply, is just living up to our potential. And so if we're growing, growth is one of our other key values. It's just continuous growth, 1% better every day. stole that one as well. I did a podcast with Iman's CEO, Paul Daly.
Cool.
And very impressive guy. Like, one of the most impressive guys I spoke to. Told me that he was offered a COO role before Iman, multiple $1 million salary per year. Salary. And he turned it down and went to Iman. Why? Culture and what he could learn from being around Iman. Smart, right? Short term versus long term. Right? What's the growth trajectory? Where is this going? Okay, maybe I can take a higher salary now, but like, where am I really going to go with that? What is the long-term perspective? And the team know, like, we have a very clear contract. By being together, by being in this unit, we're all going to grow so much quicker by being together, right? Like, that is part of the exchanges. I literally like mentoring and coaching you to grow faster, and it will ultimately get you towards your goal quicker. And even if that means they leave at some point and do their own thing, awesome. I'm like super happy for them to do that.
That's kind of what you want as well. You want them to be able to take the knowledge, experience, like learn, apply it, and then go off and do your own thing. And that's why, even coming from like that kind of 9-to-5 background, for someone like me or you, it's very difficult to be in that environment because there's always a ceiling. Yep. There's a cap on your potential, a cap on your salary, a cap on this. So when you do grow personally, you don't realize it. You can't even get past that point, you know? So having that limitless upward trajectory, and as to your point, you know, the lower end of it going badly, if you don't pull yourself around, that's very valuable. You mentioned the spiritual side and the religious side. So you're a religious dude, aren't you? And you're practicing like once a week. You're always going to, is there a ceremony you go to every Sunday?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I follow just one religion specifically. So I wouldn't say I identify as one religion. I grew up with a dad who was Muslim and a mum who was Christian, and one of the best things about my childhood was that they gave me the choice. They always gave me choice. They never... Sometimes my dad was on the Indian side. So let's say he would highly encourage me to do certain things, right? But he never flat out forced me. And I know plenty of people who was like, they were forced to do things, right? They said, choose whatever you want to choose. I chose none. I chose the path of atheism, essentially, for many, many years of my life. And finding spirituality, God, religion, whatever resonates, was one of the key things that propelled my business forward. Because without God or something higher, you're just living in a world of ego. It really, I can't get along. If someone is like a flat out atheist and doesn't believe in anything above themselves, we're just not going to get along. Like, honestly, it's going to be really difficult to resonate. We don't have to have the same beliefs. We can be completely different religious views. But to me, if you can't think there's something bigger than just you in this physical reality, you can just go and study science to realize that's not true. You just look at science and how we got here. It's too impossible of a scenario that we got here just randomly by how some science would say. So yeah, I go to church on Sundays. It's called Hillsong. It's more of like a concert is the best way to describe it. You're singing, you're dancing, you're just getting in touch with God, right? But before that, it was more like the spiritual side of things. So finding a guy called Joe Dispenza, I don't know if you've heard of him. Yeah. He's big on like quantum physics and manifestation, meditation. That really propelled me because this is where I went inward. I'd meditate for 3 hours a day and just focus on essentially trying to just get inside my body, expand, the heart, start to feel higher states. And it was like a little peanut of like something I could feel back then because I was so closed. I was just so logical. I was so like serious all the time. I wasn't fun to be around. I actually had a time when I was very much in the atheist just mindset, and I said like to myself, if I died right now, would anyone really care? Sure, my family are going to be very upset. Close friends are going to be upset, but would anyone really, really care? And the honest answer was probably not. And that shook me to my core because it made me realize that I wasn't living a life true to myself.
What age were you in?
I was around 21, 22.
They're good realizations to have, though, at that point,
Well, it's because I started feeding myself with better inputs. That was all it was, just better inputs going into my brain. We're always getting programmed at every moment, right? And if you can just accept that everything around us is programming us, news, media, schools, you can say that's bad, or you can say, why not just program myself with useful shit, right? And so that's the way I think about it. And Yeah, dude. Like finding God. Like my girlfriend, she grew up Catholic actually, and she's way more on the spiritual side than me, which has been awesome to go on that journey together. But ultimately, like whatever the belief is, I don't really. It's about like to me at this point, it's about what's useful, what's practical at the end of the day. And I signed up a new client. And by the way, if you are religious or spiritual, it really helps with signing clients. If they're also of that same belief, I can guarantee you it becomes a lot easier to sign them because you have that shared common ground. Seriously.
Really?
A new guy signed up, estate agent, 26, got married at 21, having his first child, Christian guy. We just talked about Christianity on the sales call, signed straight up. Because you have that mutual understanding, you know what type of person someone is if they follow some kind of faith, or if they actually follow it and actually embody it. You have a very strong sense of who they are.
Especially with Christianity, that's kind of quite declining in places like Ireland.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah. I mean, you guys have had quite the history with it.
100%. But amongst younger people, so I'm 27 now. Like it's, I would say, I don't know how much it would be, but very, very low percentage at this stage.
This is why it took me a long time to get here, because I'm also like my mission on my YouTube channel says helping humanity unplug from the matrix. So I know a lot about what these religions are doing, what they're perpetuating, the control, the darkness in them. Horrific stories that I wouldn't even say on this if it's going on YouTube, right?
And that's the funniest thing, is that I haven't even gone into the details of some of them, because like I don't necessarily even want to know, but I know how bad it's been in Ireland. But I've had guys on my show, you might know Adam Power. Adam Power is another guy that's in a really good agency based in Dubai now. He's very religious, and we were talking about this on our podcast. And I was just saying that it's those stories that make it so difficult for some people to unhinge from it. You know, and like my family, mom's very Christian, Catholic, and but that's been watered down, you know, as a result, through her family, through like our family and everything, which is like, of course, like a shame, but that's why I like speaking to people like yourself who have a very young perspective on it, about like, okay, this is how you actually let it benefit your life and not feed into all the media bullshit.
I think at their essence, all religions are basically saying the same thing when you actually start to study them. And what I found is like people are watching more YouTube than ever. People are trying to get more information than ever. Why not go back to the original textbooks? Like clearly they knew something. Have they been changed and adapted? Sure. Have they been rewritten in times? Sure. Have they been manipulated in ways? Sure. But do you think if you just sat down and read a Bible or a Quran for an hour and just truly studied it, you might actually learn some deep, real wisdom? Because so much of the stuff in the spiritual world, in the business world, it's just watered down shit from that anyway. The essence really comes all the way back there. And to me, I always thought, well, why not some guys just got some course based on what he learned from some other guy in some course, what he learned from some mentor, what he learned from some book, and it all comes back to the same stuff. So why not just go to the source, right? And I look at it like that is where the original deep wisdom is. I still struggle with a lot of it when people say certain things about Jesus being the only one, and I struggle with that, to be real. Like, it's not like I don't question these things, and I don't just blindly follow it. I use my own discernment, and I take what actually resonates with it. And that's the key thing. It's very easy to go, you are left, you are right, you are Muslim, you are this. Just realize, why is that divisiveness pushed in the first place, and what is the reason for that, and does that actually serve you? And you ask a couple questions, you realize it's just a lot of bullshit. Just uses smoke and mirrors to distract us and
100%.
stop us in the first place.
So it's like putting you into those different buckets to identify you as a certain individual, or identify you as someone politically or religiously in that vertical. But like, you actually do have a lot of like clear, independent thoughts. And it's obviously coming from like the way you study, you know, original textbooks, whether it's like the Bible, whether it's Quran or whatever. You have that original thought process, which a lot of people don't have. If you're a product of the SMA course or the tweets you're reading, all of your knowledge is based on the last 3 or 5 years, you know, to some degree. You don't have any of that historical evidence or historical work. That's why I actually recommend reading like philosophy books or history books, getting into a lot of those closer details, because that's when we're going to figure out how history has repeated itself, how history happens, how human greed takes place, everything, you know?
If you wanna learn what's gonna happen in your future, just read history, because we
100%.
repeat the same thing again and again and again, and
You can
it
learn a
just
lot about
continues.
money about that as well, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I had Robert Breedlove on a podcast.
Okay.
And really big, like Bitcoin maxi, but his history, so he's very religious, but his history is literally in history. So all of his like understanding and knowledge of like his like maxi perspective has all come back from history. And crazy references like about how like the first currency was like seashells, and how the seashells broke down because the supply of it, people were going and knocking on wood and knocking on metal and turning it into seashells, and all these small nuances of how we've got to today.
Wow.
And that perspective has all dated back. And the guy is like, when I spoke to him, it's kind of like, you know, when someone's so knowledgeable, it's so difficult to even ask the question because they've gone to such lower detail that it's very difficult to get to that point.
Yeah.
Because it's taken them 35 years to get to this point.
Well, yeah. And that's it. You just look back at time. This is why I like studying human behavior. And this is why I always come back to knowing yourself. Because if you know yourself, you understand how humans work fundamentally. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you can understand how human psychology and behavior works, then you can figure basically anything out if you really just sit down and try and focus on it. Mm-hmm. And we've just got so much dopamine, so much distractions. It's hard to even get to that point. Yeah. And to give I know you like the details on the practical stuff on here. So like one of the biggest things I ever did and the best things I ever did was just get rid of all external influences for a period of time. Delete all the socials, stop watching 50 guys on YouTube, maybe watch one who you actually agree with, and just remove all of the distractions, because then that's where original thought comes from. That's where clarity comes from. That's where intuition comes from. That's like the real intelligence. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I get a bunch of guys still DMing me to this day because I was on Iman's channel for this success interview thing, right? And I remember he said, "Where can people find you at the end?" And I said, "Nowhere. I'm not on socials. Don't put my name in it." I massively regret that now because I didn't know how big he was going to get and that I'd be in the business of helping people. Yeah. But to that point, like I had a couple years out of social media, and that's what just gave me the space to even actually do these things we're saying are simple, but they're not easy.
7 years, man.
And so this is why I say, if you're a fat kid, don't keep the cookies in the cupboard, right? Just get rid of it. Don't use discipline. Don't rely on discipline and willpower. It sounds good and catchy and flashy to say that. Just work harder. It's like, and you do need to do that, but why not just stack the cards in your favor? Mm-hmm. Give yourself a bunch of aces. Just get rid of all the shit that's stopping you from doing what you need to do, right? And so, just don't have that stuff downloaded on your phone. Reset your own levels, and then this kind of stuff, like actually studying history or these things we're saying, become easier.
And just doing the work becomes easier. So, one of the core principles of Atomic Habits is just like make the good stuff easier, make the bad stuff harder, right?
Exactly.
So, like I think when I was in Singapore, I had my phone always locked in the top drawer in my kitchen because I need to get a chair to get onto here to get it because it's literally 12 foot high, right? So the small principles like that, and like all this bullshit that's going on in the news recently about like aliens or some shit, I didn't see any of it at all for the last 3 weeks because I didn't
even know about that.
Exactly. The only reason why I know it is because my mate Dylan Madden, who was on my podcast, shared a reel of me and him, and I clicked on his page, and his most recent reel was about that, taking the piss out of it, being like, get back to work, go back closing clients, you shouldn't be looking at the news. And I thought that was very interesting because I have no access to external information. The only thing I have is obviously my lead flow of my podcast guests that I research. So I'm going through that content. That's the only content that I'm following that I actively go seek out. Everything else is scheduled. All my tweets are scheduled. All my LinkedIn posts are scheduled. All my Instagram posts are scheduled. My podcasts are scheduled. I'm not actually on the platforms.
Yes.
And that's because I can focus on the work. And it's very interesting. I want to get your thoughts on this too. So you've been living in Bali for about 9 months now at this stage. I've been in Asia for about 3 years, I guess, in total. What would you say the main benefit is of being completely extracted from London and being out here and just kind of focusing on the business?
It's funny because when most people think about moving from a city like that to somewhere like Bali, you think like coconuts, surfing, freedom, all of these things, which absolutely you can do in Bali, but it was the complete opposite. I worked more, I had more business success, I got in better shape.
Yeah.
All these things happen from being in this environment. Why? I think one of the main reasons is who you surround yourself with is who you become. Someone like this is just a magnet. Bali's just a magnet for people who have that same mindset and want to connect and do things together, right? I was in London, which is arguably one of the best cities to be in, right? For connecting with people, lots of people in it, millions of people. But people weren't open in the same way. They didn't come here in the same way with that same mindset and intention. So hands down, that's been the best thing. It's been the people here, because the amount of dinners I've just been at and sat next to some uber successful guy or some famous dude who I just wouldn't have met otherwise and just built a real connection with them I can't even count how many times that's happened, right? So that's definitely been one of the best things. And just for me, I realized on that spiritual journey, I realized how important like environment was. It's like when I talk about internal state, right? So it's made up of 3 core components: thoughts, feelings, and environment. Those are the 3 key things that affect your internal state. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? And what environment are you in, right? What affects your internal state is what creates your external reality, right? That's the formula. And so environment, people are part of that. Physically, where are you? Like, we were talking about surfing. Dude, getting out in the water, like, it clears you in a way and it refreshes you and it gives you new thoughts and rejuvenates you in a way that you just can't get when you're in an urban jungle all the time, right? So that's a real thing. And why do you think, while climate change is being reported in the news, all the millionaires and billionaires are buying more beachfront property than ever, right? Because they know that and they know it's bullshit. Yeah. So, yeah, but Bali has probably been one of the top best decisions I've made.
I think one of the reasons why people are so open here is because when you're in London, sorry, my throat, people are like, oh, it's closed mindset because they like not own London, but they're from London. It's like, I'm not going to give you this information. But Bali's like rented land. You come here, I come here. We don't own it. Nothing in particular like that. So like, I'm happy to exchange ideas. And I was like, oh yeah, like I'll help you with your podcast. You help me with this, whatever. Because you're coming here for that more open perspective, which is really cool. Yep. That's what's very unique, And on the environment, right? So my podcast is always around 23 to 30-year-old guys, right? Every single day, I get a message from someone from Ireland being like, don't know how you left the Irish mindset. Ireland is so small. He would pull you back down because it's way smaller than the UK. Like, it's 4 million people or whatever it is. And they're like, I don't know how you do it. Like, I feel under so much pressure here by my friends and my peers. I've also gave up alcohol. So I'm just about passing a year without alcohol. And I have a lot of videos on that. And some of those videos, some of the comments are really positive. Some of them are really negative. Some guys being like, oh, like, get back drinking, all this. Other comments are like, I could never do that. My friends are pulling me down to the bar. And what I always recommend is get yourself into a new environment.
Yep.
And even if you're building something or working a remote job, like a sales job, for your agency or whatever, you can be in Thailand. You can be in a $30 per night guest house, acquiring that capital, giving yourself that oxygen, and then come off and do something you want then from it, But I find that, so you have an American girlfriend, I have an American girlfriend. To me, this is so obvious now, but I feel the pain that people have that they can't leave that current environment. And environment design is everything. Yep. It's literally everything. And I'm less preoccupied with like how my fucking laptop looks right in front of me. I'm more preoccupied with where I am, the sun is shining, the gym's nearby, the food is good. It's generally a good vibe, Does that make sense?
100%.
I never really got into like the fucking desk productivity kind of thing.
Oh, I did that, bro. I went through that phase, bro. I literally had like the room with the view, the stand up, the microphone coming off it, the ridiculously big screen that you would never need, because what the fuck do you need that for? Yeah. I had the whole setup, and what's funny, I moved into this beautiful penthouse apartment in London during COVID, and it was like the dream apartment, right? Yeah. I never fucking used any of it, dude. And I started actually just working from a laptop, like I do now. But I just want to say one thing about that point you said about drinking. It's a big thing for me as well. Drinking was one of those habits I just couldn't seem to kick for a lot of years because my identity was in it. It was the way I would, make friends. It was the way I would get girls, 100%. Yeah. We can talk about that as well. It was how I would essentially escape from doing what I was doing and not actually enjoying it. So this is why COVID was the best thing. Because
COVID was the best thing in the world. Yeah, I loved it.
It made it easy. But what I'll say about the drinking is like it comes back to that point earlier. Just remove shit. Like, don't worry about doing new stuff. Just remove the bad things, and naturally, you will just. It's like pulling back a slingshot, right? You will just propel forward. from doing that. And so, yes, it helps to be in a better environment for that, or be around people who don't do that. Yeah, and yes, will you have peer pressure if you have friends who drink? Sure. But at a certain point, like particularly if you're running your own thing, I just looked at it in terms of opportunity cost.
Oh, man, you're speaking my fucking
That was
language,
what did it.
man.
That
You're
was what did
speaking
it
my
for me,
language
yeah.
at this point.
Yeah, I haven't drunk in a while.
I can share you a clip of this now, right? Of last week, I recorded a video on this, and I was like, the only way to do this, if you feel that pressure, right, is set a goal really, really big, so that the pursuit of the goal is greater than the opportunity cost of drinking. So if I want to get super, even shredded, I know that's very like a egotistical goal, but even if that's your goal, right, or you want to travel, or you want to build a business, you won't want to go out on a Friday or a Saturday. And if you do go out, you'll kind of regret it so much that you won't do it again. But the biggest issue for me, again, when I was quite younger and I was like in these grad programs, like wasting my time, was that I wanted to go to the weekend because I'm escaping my reality, number one. And number two, sure, there's nothing else to do. I don't have anything else I'm pushing towards. I've already gone to the gym Monday to Friday. Now let's stay up till 6 o'clock in the morning, Saturday and Sunday. And I was single at the time as well. And again, like super like ego-driven dude that like to get girls or to be with girls or to be in the right scene, you want to be that party boy as well at the same time, you know?
This is one of the reasons why I had these big ups and downs in the agency, right? Because the reality was one of my biggest drivers was just women and sex. Mm-hmm. And so when I moved into the apartment, I had the space. I could go out, get women, have sex. Yeah. I then had zero motivation the next day. What am I working for? I've just done what my goal was, right? And so I would have, that's why I would have these massive spikes up and down. And so like, and when I speak to guys, because a lot of guys ask me about my relationship because they see things I do with my girlfriend and they're like, dude, how do you have the time to do that? Doesn't it take away from your business, X, Y, Z? I'm like, no, dude, like, this helps my business.
100%.
And they literally, it's not that they don't believe me. They just don't understand how that's possible. I was like that, dude. I used to be in the relationship where the girlfriend wouldn't want me to work. She would drain my energy, right? And it would take away from the business. But when you're in the right relationship where you're with the right woman, if she's in her feminine and you're in your masculine, she's going to naturally want you to propel, and she's actually going to feed you with energy to want to go and succeed. She's actually going to give you motivation to want to go and crush it more when you're with the right kind of girl. And that motivation and that fuel is powerful, man. And this is the point of like, with a girlfriend, I meet a lot of really successful dudes who are crushing at a young age. A lot more, I'd say more often than not, they're in non-monogamous relationships, or that's what they want. And I've had a lot of interesting conversations about this. I see both sides. I understand why they want that, because they can, first and foremost, right? They can do that because they've done the work to achieve that. But what I found was, it sounds like we had a similar path of just like getting around a lot when we were younger. But let's just be,
man, I was like running Tinder into the fucking ground, man. You know what I mean?
It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
I did that to know that for me, the grass isn't greener. I literally did every experience, every fantasy that I wanted to do, which was cool. I actually don't regret any of it. But I realized the grass wasn't greener, and I realized what I did actually want. And it's those core things in a relationship, right? It's actually someone who's providing stability, who supports you, who sees your vision. Of course, someone who's beautiful and attractive. Like, let's be honest, we want that. It's really important. Amazing sex. Yeah, of course, to me, it's really important. But those are the values. Are we growing together? Do we have the same vision? Do we see this going in this direction? Those things are the bedrock of it. And having a shared mission doesn't necessarily mean you have to be doing the same thing. But if you both have something you're working on, statistically, it shows that those are relationships that work out the best because you're both growing together. Past relationships, some of them ended with me not because it was toxic or someone cheated on them. It was because we were just growing in different directions, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's harder because there's not something bad that's happened. You can't be angry. You can't say she did this, he did that. But that path of growth, if you're in that pursuit of growth, it's just a natural, and that's all relationship. It's just something you have to accept.
So I had Sadia Khan on my podcast.
I saw that one, man. Nice.
Oh man, we went into so much details on this, and just one point there, but you said you're growing differently. Now, obviously, I don't know the details of that, but a common thing that happens, right, is let's say high school jock gets with the head of the cheerleading captain. So good, beautiful, whatever. When they leave high school and they go into the real world, high school jock becomes this beer fucking drinking loser who's just, working in like some shitty job, does nothing with his life, whatever. The cheerleader actually goes on to become a lawyer, and she's a super ambitious lawyer. She has her own business. She's smashing it. They've grown at such an imbalance that they both grow resentful, and that's when it all breaks down. So they can hang on to that because they're hanging on to the high school days, which is like torturous. I've seen so many people that I knew from when younger who are now breaking up. Why? One's a loser and one is trying to become successful. And to your point there about like the young people who like make a lot of money, I think one of the reasons why is because when you were younger, when I was younger, you obviously want to get like the hottest girl possible. And now like anyone to some degree can get like the OnlyFans, like unbelievable looking girl who just wants to sit at the pool all day and whatever. So when you have that money to meet that demand, that's what their demands are, you can get with them. So you can get with this beautiful girl, Eastern European girl, who's literally looks like an AI bot, and just give her a Prada bag, right? And she's going to be happy. But you need to go back to the laptop to keep the lifestyle going and keep just the business going at the very least. Forget about her, but the business going at the very least. And now she gets none of the attention. She's cheating in the background. She's up to weird shit in the background because you're not getting with someone who shares those core values. Whereas like it sounds like quite similar to your girlfriend, but my girlfriend, I met her when I was about 3 years ago, and we were building continuously. I've helped her business. She's helped mine. We've started the dog rescue together. So we're kind of on that shared mission. Now, when we moved into our house on Wednesday, which was a fucking melt, by the way, I was so busy. It was Tuesday. I was so busy because we had loads of releases and we're on a very tight schedule with content releasing. I had to go onto my laptop and work 14 hours a day. She wanted to put away all the clothes, and she was very happy to do that. And she just took my suitcase. I didn't ask her. She just put away all my stuff, and I was like really grateful for it and really appreciate it. Now, in other relationships, that could have all broken down. She's like, well, you take care of your shit, you do this, whatever, So it was in that period whereby she identified that I needed like literal help. Like I was fucking all over the place. And at the same time, I need to keep the business moving. And that's what makes it work together,
Yeah, one thing I found interesting about that, I think what men actually want in a relationship is not actually that much.
Yeah.
It's actually really just little things like, if you would mind like helping me put away some stuff, or like maybe you could like bring me a glass of water if I don't have time to get, like literally the tiniest things. Mm-hmm. But men are too afraid to ask because of social conditioning, because of feminist movements,
all this
shit, right? Yeah. And dude, I'm so pissed, right? Because do you know who Mike Chang is?
Mike Chang.
He was like the OG fitness guy who ran Six Pack Shortcuts. He was like the biggest guy on YouTube back in 2016.
I love all those OG bros.
Anyway, so he's now gone like completely different, like more spiritual, moved to Bali, he has this amazing mansion, and I was staying in it, right, with my girlfriend. And one of his books in there was Way of the Superior Man. I don't know if you've heard of this book. The title would suggest, okay, this might be not something a girl would want to read, right? Because it's... Anyway, I was sitting down reading it, and a lot of it's just, I would say it's more about like traditional masculinity, traditional relationships, almost all of which I agree with. It's just more fact than anything else. And I thought, let's have some fun. Maybe I'll just read out some chapters to her. So one was about having a predisposition to want to have multiple sexual partners, right? Now, you can say, is that right? Is that wrong? Sure, you can have that debate, but it just is what it is, right? It just is what it is, right?
100%.
Multiple things like that, what a man's role is traditionally, what a woman's role is traditionally. And I ended up putting on the camera, and I was like, this could make good content. And I was just reading chapters to her, and I was expecting her to get super triggered.
Yeah.
She agreed with everything, bro. But the reason why is because I didn't just hide what I truly wanted and hope she would just somehow change. I was very upfront with her. I was like, here's what I actually want in a relationship. Like, this is what I actually want. And I'm not saying I expect that of you. I'm just saying, here's what I actually want, right? And as men, like, you have to be the leader in a relationship, right? You have, because it's not their job to lead, right? It's your job to lead. And I'm saying this because in my relationship, it's been so eye-opening to say, if you're just honest and you're just transparent and clear, it doesn't mean you have to see eye to eye on everything, but at least you can have that mutual respect and understanding for each other. And more often than not, you're going to naturally fall into place and agree on these basic things. And it's, to your point, it's not like, oh, your girlfriend's the woman, so she should put everything away. It's like, no, you just, like, we're fucking busy crushing it, and she wanted to help out, right? And she did that out of choice. Doesn't mean she's less than. Doesn't mean she's this or you're a misogynist for that. It's just like, no, that's
just wanted to help.
She just wanted to help, and I think the more you're naturally in your masculine and the more she's naturally in her feminine, the more that just happens, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you have children, right? And if she's going to be having the child and spending more time with the child, naturally those roles are probably going to change over time as well. And again, it's just coming back to nature, what feels right internally, which again always just comes back to like knowing yourself, knowing your internal state. And there's just so much bullshit programming out there, right? Like you get a sex case saying hi to Sarah at the office. Like this shit happens now. So men are terrified. Women are saying there are no strong masculine men out there. Men are saying, well, if I'm like that, I fucking could go to jail. Quite literally. Literally, man. Right? So no wonder we're here.
And I like that the tide is turning to some degree as well with this. It's nice because, like, man, for the last 5 years, I don't want to fucking name names of companies and stuff, but, like, I've seen companies fire executive staff to even it out. So, and not take on applicants that were male, to actually not even look at them, because you want to even things out and change all these different dynamics, right? And that's not to say that we shouldn't hire a woman, but it's about hiring the right person to the role. And a lot of the data that comes back in it, some of it's fucking heavily skewed and fucked up in the first place. So companies not disclosing the right information, and that traditional like approach, people like have an issue with, and it just went so far that now finally people like Tate have been pulling it back, and people are slowly seeing the light. And I think the best thing that could have happened is Tate exposing BBC for everything that was happening for the last couple of weeks, because now you got to the point where, of course, what's happening to him now is even 10 times worse what happened a couple of weeks ago. But people are realizing that all of that stuff is bullshit, and it's not men that are realizing it, also women. And even when I was speaking with my girlfriend, like we went through I went through all Tate's interviews, and I would have them on in my apartment, and she would largely agree with 98% of them, and as would I. And there's obviously a proportion that I wouldn't agree with, but that's not to say that I would agree with everything. Same when we're speaking. I don't want you to agree with everything that I'm saying, and I don't want to agree with everything that you're saying. It leads to a stupid conversation.
It'll be boring anyway.
But that's the fundamentals of life. Like, and actually, funny enough, like I have close people say to me as well, they're like, oh, I don't really agree with 100% Tate says, or 100% of like what the masculinity kind of like movement is, I guess, to some degree. And I was like, yeah, but you're not meant to. You're not meant to look at a menu in a restaurant and want everything on it. You know what I mean? You want to pick and choose from there, you know? Which I think is it's slowly coming around. I feel like that it's going to be people like yourself who are positive influences will change that in a good way, you know?
I just think it's what has to happen. The pendulum has swung so far to one side that now it's coming crashing back. And I think the interesting thing is now, to your point, it's women who actually make the difference now, because the men were already coming there. The men are now like, yeah, what the fuck have we been doing for the last 10 years, right? Literally, literally waking up. And now women are starting to see it. And that's really, because all the arguments disintegrate when women are agreeing with it. Any attack you want to make on it, if women are agreeing with it, if the men are agreeing with it and the women agree with it, that's everyone. So the argument breaks down very quickly.
Tate made a really good point about this, about how like it's generational conditioning. That, to your point, like what the fuck happened over 10 years? I know exactly what happened, because when we were in school, you're a year older than me, it was very like normal, and this is the way it is. And then the generation below us, so the guys you were mentioning you're hanging around with who are like 21, 20, maybe when they were coming out of school, it was getting a little bit fucked up. And now it's the younger people then that comes through. And those, you just have to tell young people certain things, and they will, by default, believe it. Maybe 12%, 15%, 20% will believe it. But over time, that will go into the new group, and that new group will start believing it, and it grows. That's how the first set of beliefs were given to us, and over time it gets worse, you know. So it's very important. Like, and I'm not someone, oddly, and this is actually kind of a different opinion, is that right now I don't want children. Okay, just personally, myself and Lisa have spoken that we feel like that our lives we don't necessarily want to have children. But I'm worried for people who do have children. My brother does. My brother has a newborn who is about 6 months old now at this stage. And I'm worried about how would she go through school, and how school would be perceived to her, and how the world would look at that point. Yeah. And there needs to be those kind of like borders, you know?
Yeah, 100%, dude. Like, children are in my future. And I was watching a really good podcast, Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett. He had a guy called Mo Gaudat on it. So I've followed Mo for a really long time, really respect him. Used to be like the head of like all the innovation at Google, just helping people with happiness. Now he's talking about AI. And he was asked, what about kids? And his number one warning was like, if you're going to have kids, maybe wait a couple years. And this is a guy I really respect. And he was like, I wouldn't be having kids in the next couple years because we just don't know how much things are going to change. Like things are going to change faster than they ever have over these next couple of years, right? And so for me, it's like, well, I know I want to have kids. Like I was on, Luke Belmar.
Yeah.
I was at his event the other day, and I was on. Someone had a camera on me for YouTube and was like, "Give some advice to young entrepreneurs." And I said, "Get married and have 10 children." On it, just to prove a point, right? More to say, start adopting more traditional views and embodying those, because I think that's actually what we need. I think the family unit is what's been destroyed, and I think bringing back a sense of that and that more traditionalism. That's why I go to church. That's why I embody these different things. Is that are just all healthy traits that actually get you the life you want if you follow those things. Doesn't mean you have to go have kids at a young age. Doesn't mean you have to say I am a Christian, I am a Muslim. But you can use the essence of them, right, to live a good life. And I forgot the point I was originally making, but it was just an interesting.
We're just kind of going fucking random directions now. How did you get into that Luke Belmar event? Are you in this group?
No, it was just did an event in Bali.
Nice.
Yeah, just showed up to it. Yeah,
that's sick, man. And like he just did a public event.
Yeah.
Did you meet him?
Yeah.
Cool, man.
He actually, so I met him, and it was interesting. He looked at my tattoo, right, and it's a very intricate tattoo here, and there's a really small, the fingers touching, like the Renaissance, right?
Yeah.
And he. Just the dude is like, this is what it felt like, right? I'm like Windows Vista meeting like an M2 MacBook. That's the best way.
So sharp,
that's the best way I can describe meeting this dude. And he just zones in on this tiny little part of this tattoo. You can barely even see it. It's like on the side of my arm. And he just shows me his one. He's got a bigger one on his arm. And he just starts like quoting Leonardo da Vinci for like 5 minutes at me. And he's just like all of this stuff. And really interesting guy. I actually asked him to come on my podcast, and he said yeah. And I was like, okay, like, how should we let organize it? He was like, send me a DM on Instagram, and I'm like, dude, come on, we both know you're not going to see that. And then he was like, no, I will. And then it actually never ended up happening. But one thing I'll say about that is there was probably a couple hundred entrepreneurs there. And I've been to a lot of these different events before. The general energy, and I would say like frequency of the event was so high. People were genuinely there to provide value to each other, to help each other, to lift each other up. Luke was giving out tangible business advice. You're doing this, let me connect you with this person. Is that a product I could use? Have you thought about this specific thing? He was giving people such good, real advice, and he attracted that kind of crowd. And it was genuinely like such a good vibration to be at. It was uplifting, so uplifting, and only good things to say about him and meeting him there. Yeah,
he's really blown up, like for the right reasons, and he made a really good point how like he's been always working, building those foundations for like 6 years, and then he pops. Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah, you know what I mean. That's the way it should be. Like it's like he's done all that work, and someone I definitely want to get on the podcast over next couple of years. He's like someone that you would fly somewhere. Like I met Justin Walter and I flew to Dubai to meet him, and he's someone that I would definitely would love to just do like a 2-3 hour session. Like someone that zones in a tattoo like that and goes into detail. That's someone you want to meet in person.
I'll be curious. What was something you learned from Justin Waller?
Good question, man. The biggest thing is just take responsibility. No one else's fault. Yeah, you might work with someone who's like, maybe like a bad client or someone who did you wrong, but just take responsibility always and lead with that mentality, and also just try to provide for other people around you. You know what I mean? That you're not building this capital so that you can fucking just spend it on Lambo or look it on a bank account. You want to provide people around you. You want to be helpful. You don't want to blow your money on stupid shit, but you need to get those core bases down. And I'll tell you a story. You like this. So you a fan of Justin?
Yeah, I think he's a great guy. Yeah.
Okay, you'll love this, right? Yeah. So have you ever met his manager? You're not familiar with his like circle, no?
No.
So reach out to him on Gmail, send him an email. And he was like, yeah, message my manager. His manager's name is Thomas. He's 21 years old. He's from somewhere in Eastern Europe originally. He moved to US, so his like parents are immigrants. And like super ambitious, a young dude, whatever. And he was the manager for Fresh and Fit, manager for Tate, and he just like got into this group like 18, 19, and he's a fucking super sharp guy, right? And he runs their content team. The guys produce over 100 clips a week. 100 clips a week. Every clip does like 100K views. How are they not going to be huge? Anyway, reach out to him, and I was like, look, I want to do it in person. And he was like, Grant, we're going to be in Dubai. I was in Singapore, and I was like, I'll fly to meet you. He goes, Grant, no problem. So that was it. That was the only conversation I had. I booked a studio, which is Podster, which is where they do all the big like TED interviews and stuff. And I was like, I'll see you at 2:00 on like a Tuesday. And I was like, I'm flying from Singapore, so like, I hope you're there, you know. But I was trying to be like really nice, but be like, don't cancel on me, because of course you get so many messages, you know. You could have went to a bigger podcast, whatever. So anyway, that was it. I fly to Dubai, and I'm obviously like super nervous for this interview, and it's like a really big interview. I don't really get nervous, but I'm kind of apprehensive, let's say. So I'm there at 1 p.m. I check my watch, nowhere to be seen, nothing, whatever. 1:30 comes, no one around. And I was looking outside. I'm on the second floor. I'm looking at the car park. There's no car coming. It's fucking empty. And I'm like, Christ, man, if I flew all here and he's not here now. 20 to 2, 10 to 2, 5 to 2. We're recording at 2:00. And all I guess here is like steps coming up behind me. And I looked over my shoulder and I see Justin walking down. Now, he doesn't know what I look like because we're talking on email. So I just see him and I walk up to him. I'm like, Justin, like, pleasure to meet you. And he looked down at me like this. He's 6'4". And he was like, absolute pleasure to meet you. How's your day going? How are you enjoying like your today? Is there anything I can help you with? Or whatever. And I like look up to him. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing really well. I'm like, I'm the one that's interviewing you. He was like, oh, you're the guy that came from Singapore. He was like, yeah, nice to meet you. He was like, yeah, I'm inside just getting set up. So he didn't know who I was. And he was a super respectful, super kind. He thought I was like a fucking fan. And he was like, yep, this is someone that, you know, has given me their time by saying, hi, how are you? And I want to reciprocate. And he was super, super genuine. And nothing but good things to say about him.
To me, that's the biggest takeaway. Because it's like, I don't look at what people say, I look at what they do.
Yeah.
So to me, that's everything, right? Yeah. Like, what is he really like when the cameras aren't on and it's just you're just a fan at that moment, as he doesn't know who you are.
Nothing.
And that's how you decide to act. That to me is the golden nugget to take away. Because that is that if I'm someone listening to this, or even myself, is like, okay, cool. That's a trait I want to actually go and embody more of.
Super respectful.
Respect.
And it was crazy, man, because like he was like he literally looking down at me, being like, how's everything going, like whatever. And you could see he was exhausted because he was on this run doing loads of podcasts. You could see he was tired, and taking the time to just speak to someone and be very nice to them, you know, it's cool.
Goes a long way. And
since then, like, he's connected me with Sterling Cooper. He's connected me with loads of other guys, which I've been very lucky to meet. Some of them virtually, some of them in person. But yeah, man, like, just of that group, they're super, super unique because they help other people get to that stage. And like, I'm not in the war room. I'm not in the real world. I don't do any of that. They never asked me to do anything. Never pitch anything to me ever. And they just very, very helpful. And like, you know, they take the content. They want to grow their own stuff with it. They always reference your content. But it's like that genuine like brotherhood of like wanting to help someone, wanting to see someone do really well. And he said to me, because like he checked out my channel, which was quite small at the time, and he was like, yeah, you know, you've like 5,000 followers, whatever. He was like, there'll come a day where you'll pass me. And he was like, that's like what I'm looking for. I'm looking to bring someone like you up to pass me at some point. And no one said stuff like that to me before, you know?
What did that do for your belief?
It just made me realize that the people at the top didn't get there by pushing other people down. Yeah. They got there by uplifting other people and working together, you know? And I don't know if you're familiar with Dylan Madden, who is one of the professors in the real world. And like the guy literally messaged, so he's so fucking busy, like so busy. He's a huge team. And he messaged me on WhatsApp being like, my DMs are always open. Like if you need clients, you come to me and I will help you do it. Man, I recorded one podcast with him and he's like, I will do anything you need to get you more stuff. And I'm like, no man, chill. I'm like, if you come out here during the summer, we'll chill out, go for food, relax, whatever. And yeah, I don't know. It's like a different, like as you said, like energy. And like, as you can see now, like I'm really like passionate about it because at no point have those guys ever asked me for anything, ever. But they've only helped me.
How interesting is this? Going back to that point earlier about abundance, right? You're starting out, you're listening to this, maybe you're in that place of scarcity. That's what you do. How can you just genuinely provide value and help the people around you? That is abundance, right? That's incredibly abundant. They don't need anything from you. They're just there to help you. Right? In any way they can. They're not there to keep hold of it, whatever little knowledge they have, they're there to give. If you're starting out, that's something you can do right now,
Yeah.
right? The way I've networked with some really cool people is just by looking at them and going, cool, I could probably help them with this one thing. Let me just go and give them everything I know for free.
Yeah.
And truly come from no expectation as well. It's key. Like if it feels like an exchange, you can do that. You can do that tit for tat and it's fine. But for me, I prefer just to give and really not need anything back and maybe not ever get anything back, which is fine because I know doing that at scale, I'm just going to win over time anyway.
Yeah.
And it's just what feels good and leads to a good quality of life, right?
Exactly. And it doesn't become so transactional. And to some degree, like everything is transactional to some degree, maybe.
Yeah.
But I thought it was, to that point there is that's what I recommend everyone doing in the beginning. So my first 3 clients were free. I asked them to do for free, whatever. But what I noticed, I don't know what your thoughts on this are, is that sometimes when people become super successful or super wealthy, they become a bit closed off. And like, of course, they might not give you time because they don't have time, whatever, they're time poor to some degree. But they're kind of, in those free exchanges, they don't really want to be a part of it sometimes now. Now, that's kind of hard to explain. But these people, it's as if it's as if they have nothing and they're just on your level, which they're completely not, Yeah. Justin Waller was doing like 40 million a year. And then he's talking to me about fucking editing fucking video files, you know what I mean? So it's quite rare.
Here's the thing. He knew he could also learn something from you. He had the humility to say, okay, this guy's got a podcast. He clearly knows what he's doing. Maybe I can also learn something from him. Humility, right? Core value that these guys have. He recognizes that, okay, yeah, he might be ahead of you. He's been on this journey for longer, but he can also learn something from you, right? And that's the key here. Like I chose to adopt that as well. Like all these guys I meet, I'm asking them questions. I'm not just like, they're trying to ask me stuff. I'm like, yeah, this, but what about you? Like, I want to know about you, right? Because it also, how good does that make you feel, right? It makes you feel valued in that exchange by being able to give something to him. And he can genuinely learn something, right, from those exchanges. So it's always a balance. And the smartest people I've met are the quietest for most of the time because they're listening. And that's how they got to that point, right?
Yeah.
And then when you're in a place to give, you just give. And so it works both ways.
I call it the sauna effect. When you're sitting in a sauna, there's always someone who's just talking shit all the time.
Yeah. There's always one guy.
There's always one guy. It literally happened today, bear in mind. There's always someone just talking shit, and then you're sitting in the background, and like, not in a sneaky way, but like, it's the people then that don't speak are the most knowledgeable. Actually, funny enough, like I was in a sauna this morning, there was a guy I was speaking to, and he was just speaking to a couple people, and like, launched like a Korean restaurant here. It was really cool, really different, and he was kind of walking through like these different like variables of how he's building it, how he did some like competitor analysis, how he did all this benchmarking of like how the food standard is and everything here. And I was just like, fuck, like in the right place, right mindset people, But that was like so strange. And I was like, yeah, I was like, the meat quality in Singapore is like not that good for these types of restaurants. And he was like, oh, that's because of this. And I was like, yeah, I don't need to know anything about food and the food restaurant business, but it's the way he thinks about things logically that I can learn from.
Yes, 100%. Cool.
So, man, I want to say a massive thank you. I don't know what time it is. Fuck, it's 20 to 3. But I really appreciate this. I feel like that we can do another session in the future, much more of a detailed one. I want to get into conscious entrepreneur as well at a certain time, But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it as well.
Man, it was a blast. Thanks for having me, man.
Much more to come as well. And this was an hour and 40, but we could probably do another hour and 40. Man, massive thank you, man. More in the future.